Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where after checking out 2 of the 8-bit Sonic games, something a little bit odd is going on. It's like weirdness or disarray is leaking out from somewhere. So I guess it's time to check out Sonic Chaos. Or to give it its full title, Sonic the Hedgehog Chaos. This was once again developed by Aspect and published by Sega in 1993. Which means it's the first 8-bit Sonic game that wasn't released near to the Mega Drive title. But as we've seen with the two series, outside of the release dates, they really have been quite different to each other. Now if we take a look round the back of the box, we can see that Sega has actually simplified it slightly, as the number of rounds and supporting controllers are no longer mentioned. And I do think the screenshots have grown a little bit as well. Now inside the box, we get the iconic brown labelled carts, with the blue and white booklet, which goes into quite a lot of detail on the game, from the power-ups that you can get to info on each of the zones. And right there on the back pages you have somewhere that you can record your top scores, because that's what everyone cared about with Sonic, your best score. Starting the game we get an intro, much like Sonic 2. But this time Badnik is actually holding a Chaos Emerald rather than Tails. But he is there, he's just lagging behind a little bit. Which gives a bit of a hint at what we're going to find when we move past the title screen. And after being the MacGuffin in Sonic 2, we finally get the chance to play as Sonic or Tails. It is one or the other, you can't have Tails following you around like on the 16-bits. As the poor Master System could only do so much. But this is actually the first time you get to play as Tails in a single player game. Mega Drive owners would have to make do with a 2-player mode in Sonic 2 or wait another year for Sonic 3 for that privilege. I'll jump between the two of them to show off what they can both do, but where else can we start but with Sonic? And in-game, the first thing I noticed back in the day was that new sprite. After being mostly the same for the last 2 games, this really did stand out. And to be honest, I don't think it's for the better. He looks a bit too squat and shiny for my liking. But it does seem that Sonic's abilities got updated along with his new look, as he gained moves from not only Sonic 2, but also from Sonic CD. As you can charge up a spin dash, just as you would expect. But you can also do the super peel out. Now this is done by holding up and tapping the jump button. Sonic also got some more animations that allowed for some smoother loops, as well as a few other views that we'll see later. But he's also hiding another new ability that can be found from a monitor, the Rocket Shoes, which lets him take flight for either a short amount of time, or until he's brought back down to Earth if he hits anything. In these earlier zones, these tend to provide routes that will give you lots of rings, and if you're lucky, you might be able to time it just right that you can actually find a set of replacements when they end. So far, we've been running around the first zone, Turquoise Hill Zone. It's not quite green, but it's also not quite blue. And as we've seen so far, it is relatively simple, but it does help show off how they further built off Sonic 2, as the multiple routes are much clearer and defined. With having lots of spikes and platforming challenges on the lower routes, and having more rings if you manage to get up top. Now both routes actually seem to have a reasonable number of Badniks, far more than what we got to see in Sonic 2, with some really quite interesting ones like these that have springs on their backs. But I will say, like before, there really isn't much variety in the number of Badniks that you'll see, and some of them will crop up from time to time across the entirety of the game. So let's move on to the second zone, which is the hard to pronounce Gigalopolis zone, where I feel it's time to show off Tails, whose moveset is pretty much what you'd expect from Little Miles. You get the charge spin dash, just the same as Sonic, but replacing the super peel out is Tails' signature ability, Flying. Now this does tend to be a little slow and doesn't quite last as long as you might like. and there's also very little in the way of notification when it's going to end, so it might end very suddenly. But this is the only way Tails gets to fly, as he doesn't get the rocket boots. Those are a Sonic only item, with those monitors typically replaced with more rings. And as we go through this zone, it actually introduces a new surface, the sloped roof, which, as you might have guessed, is on an angle, which does mean Sonic and Tails can jump up to it from different sides, and then you get to run along it, which gives us a new set of unique animations for the heroes. But similar to some of the other surfaces that you'll see in a Sonic game, if you slow down too much then you will just fall through, so you've got to keep up that momentum. And if you make it through all those weird platforms, you'll end up in Sleeping Egg Zone, which has definite hints of Crystal Egg Zone from Sonic 2. Not only from the big old faces of Badnik all over the place, but also from the fact that many of the blocks can be broken, which isn't always a benefit, as you can end up bouncing off these and falling down from some of the higher routes. And those lower routes can be quite dangerous, as they have a lot of bottomless pits that you have to avoid. This zone also introduces the Pogo Spring, which allows you to get to higher places, and will actually just keep going till you hit a surface, so you can actually ride them for quite a while if you're lucky. Now you might have noticed that for most of the levels there are actually quite a lot of rings, and there's actually a really good reason for that, over and above the health mechanic, which, just like the second Master System game, works as you'd expect from a Sonic title, as you can recollect a limited number of them if you get hit. But if you manage to collect 100, then it will whisk you away to the Special Zone. That's right, they've made a return. And this is where you'll find the Chaos Emeralds, as they're no longer hidden in the real world. Which also means you actually have multiple attempts at trying to collect them. Each special stage is set up as a bit of a challenge, with the first one requiring you to use these rocket shoes to fly along the sky, which is filled full of rings, and also these special large rings as well. And if you don't spend too much time trying to collect all the rings and keep heading towards the right, you might finally find the Chaos Emerald. Some of the later levels challenge you to use the Pogo Spring, or to try and use the various tunnels to try and find the Chaos Emerald. And they can be quite hidden, so you might need to take multiple attempts to do so. And if you're worried about running out of time, well, these levels actually contain some of the rarer monitors in the game, the ones that have a clock, as these will stop time for a little while, which is really handy for some of the levels, as they have really tight time requirements. And finishing off the special stage, whether or not you got the Chaos Emerald or not, will actually take you to the next level, which can be a really quick way for you to finish some of the levels. Though, to be honest, none of them are really all that long or complex anyway. You might have noticed that I've only shown Sonic in the special stages, and well, the reason for that is Tails gets left out, and doesn't get the chance to collect any of the emeralds. Now, I'm not sure if this was done because of his ability to fly would have made them a bit too easy, but it does mean that Tails can't get the best ending, which is a shame, as I think it would have been cool if Tails got his own set of special stages. It really would have given you more reason to play as both the characters. Because as it stands, there really isn't that much in the way of unique paths for both of them, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference who you play as. But if you are playing as Sonic and you've actually collected all the Chaos Emeralds, then getting 100 rings will revert back to giving you an extra life, and it will always be an extra life for Tails. Though I've never found it too hard to build up a stack of lives in the game, and between them and the generous continues, you should have more than enough to finish the game with not too much issue really, as the main levels themselves aren't actually that long, and tend to be over quite quickly if you're not hunting for rings, so it shouldn't really take you all that long to end up at Mecha Green Hill Zone. which is one of the few zones that shares part of a name with the previous game. But this isn't the green hills that you've experienced before. Everything now is made of metal, with even the flowers being these little spinners. This zone also contains a lot of hidden paths, with breakable blocks in the most unlikely of places. We are definitely starting to see some more complex level design, but this seems that it might be at the expense of the frame rate, as we've seen it dip from time to time before, but it's really noticeable here. Which is a bit of a shame, as Sonic 2 felt far more stable. It would have been great if they could have kept that up. As we're over halfway through the zones, I guess it's time to talk about the bosses, which have followed the 8-bit Sonic 2 steps, with you fighting against various mechanical creatures rather than Robotnik himself. And it might have possibly the easiest boss in a Sonic game, as the very first one is this larger version of the Spring Badnik, and so all you have to do is spin charge it, and even if you try to jump at it, you'll end up hitting the spring and being thrown away. And just to make things a little bit more easier, most of the third stages now have rings that you can collect. It is great that they finally got over that one from the previous two games. And even though the shields didn't make a return, we do get to see the invincibility monitors in some of these third stages as well. And they actually last long enough that you can actually meet up against some of the bosses and get some pretty easy hits in at the beginning. So they must have heard the fans in regards to the previous game's bosses, which could be a little bit difficult, particularly on the Game Gear, as this does look as if they've taken that into consideration with the new bosses, as the smaller resolution really doesn't impact them all that much. And I do like the fact they have this nice callback with one of the Sonic 2 bosses, as you get to see these little robo chickens. And they just happen to be the boss of the next zone that we're going to look at, which it turns out it wasn't a lake, but a whole planet, as it's Aqua Planet Zone, which is quite the technical showcase for the hardware. We have this great looking sky up top that has multiple layers of scrolling going on. Just look at it with the different layers of those clouds moving. Now this wasn't something we'd seen on previous 8-bit Sonic games. They tended to look nice but be quite simple, so this effect really does stand out. And it doesn't end there, as when you go underwater it now uses a similar trick to its bigger brothers, with the colours being changed at the waterline so everything under it looks a little different. This is a massive step up from that ugly checkerboarding that we had in Sonic 2, or changing the entire screen set of colours as it did in Sonic 1. The rest of this zone is pretty much what you'd expect from a Sonic water zone, with you having to move above and below the waterline and having to deal with the slower physics when you're underwater. Though I will say it's much less of a maze than some of the ones we've seen before, so you won't feel quite as lost. And with that, we're already on the last zone, Electric Egg Zone. And amazingly, this is the first proper zone to have pipes. Where we got to see them a lot in the previous game, and in a few of the special stages, they have been absent from the rest of this title. Now you still have control over your directions at the junctions like before, but like the rest of this game, their layout is far less confusing, or as complex as Sonic 2 for the Master System, with most of them moving you forward rather than being a puzzle box for you to solve. This zone also brings back everyone's favourite, the carts. Jump in one and it will whisk Sonic away, typically towards a pit, so you might have to do a well-timed jump when required. And as we've been able to skip over a bunch of levels by going for the special stages, we've not really had much of a chance to see that ending post. And there is actually something a little unique about it, as when you finish a level it actually works out your fastest speed and gives you some extra points based on it. The best way to get a faster speed is to get the speed shoes, which do actually exist in this version and were not left in by accident. Or just have a single instance of one and then realise they don't really work and then forget them for the rest of the title. though with the general slowdown of the game, it doesn't really make them the best thing to use. I'm also not too sure if that speed counter is the most accurate, but hey, extra points is extra points. You've got to write something down in that back page. Before you realise it, you're up against the last boss, which is a Robotnik showdown, and rather than being some room-sized complex with multiple ways of attacking, he's in this chicken walker-like thing instead, and just fires different types of beams. And you can pretty much avoid most of them apart from the one that bounces around the room. That one is a bit of a pain. And if you manage to beat him, he actually has a second stage, though it does only take a single hit to take that out. But if you get that wrong, it is a single hit death. And if you manage to collect all the emeralds up to this point, he will give you the last Chaos Emerald, which will actually give you this pretty boring end sequence. It's just Sonic running in a big Chaos Emerald. I actually think they put more effort into the bad ending than the good one. And the ending is pretty much the only thing that the Chaos Emeralds change, as you don't get any extra zones for collecting them, or even getting Super Sonic either. It's just that, the end. Now when it came to the Game Gear, there were minimal changes made between it and the original Master System edition. The title screen was redrawn to match the resolution better, and various fonts were updated and changed. Audio possibly got the most changes of all of it, as where the SMS version reused some of the songs, the Game Gear actually had a few new songs created and others tweaked to work a little better. One interesting variation was in the manual, where the story got tweaked for the US Game Gear release. As in the EU version, it talks about how everything was peaceful on the South Islands, with just the occasional sonic boom from you-know-who. Until one day Robotnik stole the Red Emerald, and threw everything out of balance, with chaos leaking into the world and warping things, all while the island started to slowly sink into the ocean. In the US version, it is pretty similar, but it had to be amped up slightly, as it goes on to mention that with the Red Emerald, Robotnik now has the power to create laser weapons and nuclear bombs. Plus it also has Sonic saying at the end how the bad doctor is now charged with contempt of Hedgehog, which definitely sounds like something he would have said in the cartoon series. And this completes what I dub the Master System Sonic Trilogy. There is technically Sonic Blast, but that wasn't released over here and, well, just look at it. It might be technically advanced, but I think it looks and plays quite badly, so I really don't want to give it another go. Where I really don't mind playing Sonic Chaos again. It's not my favourite of the 8-bit Sonic games, but it is still quite a solid game. I don't think it's quite as inventive as some of the previous games, but it was a bit of a technical showcase with some of the levels. And, well, until next time, I've been the Goldfish, that was the Chaos of Sonic, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video, I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below, you know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.